Hello everyone, I hope you're all well. My name is Sarah and this is my week 4 update for World Peace Angel. Now I know there's been 2 weeks since the last video. I actually had a week completely away from stitching. Not planned, just turned out that way. And so this update I'm going to show you now is just for the week gone by. And unfortunately, not as much stitching as I would like. And I will just say from now on, I'm only going to do these videos every 2 weeks because I'm not getting as much progress done as I would like, which is fine. There's just been a lot going on and finding the time has been a little bit tricky. So I think every 2 weeks and then I'll have more to show and it won't quite be as boring, basically, because it is boring to just show you the same thing every week. Of course it's boring for everyone. Right, so this is where I am. So as you can see in the last week, I hope you can see, I have been working on this section here, which is the kind of cloth that drapes over her legs, along with this gold section here, which is kind of part of her sleeve, and then the red cuff. Now, as you can see, particularly in the gold section, there is a lot of empty spaces. And that, once again, is because those spaces will all be filled in with metallic threads. So like we said previously, there's a lot of petite treasure braid that's going to be used in this piece. And when I get to the treasure braid section, I think I'm going to have a big task ahead of me, but that's okay. I like treasure braid, so that's all good. So I will say that I didn't get as much of the section of the dress that kind of goes over her knee. So this kind of crisscross section, I didn't get as much of that done as I would have liked. And the reason is because I found it incredibly tedious. I really didn't enjoy it. Basically, you have to stitch these kind of diamonds. So there's these white diamonds that are surrounded by kind of lines of grey and a very pale green colour. And then that will have all of this treasure braid put over it at the end to make that kind of crisscross pattern. So it's just endless stitching of these white diamonds. And for some reason, I find it really boring. And I've stitched lots of projects in my life that have been, have had sections that it's not very interesting. But for some reason, that part I just really didn't enjoy it to such an extent that I would actively avoid stitching on the piece. So that's why there is so little progress to show. So from now on, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on different parts of the dress and then maybe go back to that section and do a couple of these white diamonds at a time, maybe just one strand of cotton, well, doubled over, and then move back and move, over and back so that I can get it done that way, without concentrating on it for a whole session of stitching, because I'm sorry, it's really boring. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. Anyway, moving forward, my plan for the 2 weeks coming is that I'd like to get some progress on the main dress. So as you can see, most of the dress is this green colour, which I love stitching, and I'd like to get some progress in getting that big green area stitched and then move on to some of the more the ribbons, the smaller sections, then move on to, she has this kind of cape or mantle maybe that I'd like to do following that, and then the wings and the earth and her hair and on and on and on. So yes, that's my plan. My plan is to work on the green section in these 2 weeks coming and hopefully get some progress. I had wanted to have this project finished by the end of September, and that's absolutely laughable. That's not going to happen. Certainly, well, it's not going to happen now. But if I keep going at the pace that I'm going, it'll probably be September 2027 before it's complete, because I am taking my time, that is for sure. So I'm going to try and pick up the pace a little bit. I will say I am also working on another project at the moment, which you will see. I'm going to do a video on its own when it's finished. It's not massive, but I'm really enjoying it. And I've kind of been focusing, when I have got time for stitching, that's the one I've been focusing on. So this one has been a little bit neglected, unfortunately, but I'm going to try and remedy that in the coming weeks. So that's the update for this week for my stitching, and hopefully, like I said, in a fortnight's time, which will be, I guess, the end of August, I'll have something a little bit more substantial to show you on our lovely angel. So as always, when I have been stitching, I have been listening to my audiobooks, and I'm still listening to my history book, which was called 1914 by Paul Ham. But you're not always in the mood, or certainly I'm not always in the mood, for listening to a book on the causes of the First World War. So I have also started another Rosamunde Pilcher, and of course it is The Shell Seekers. Now, The Shell Seekers is probably Pilcher's best known piece of work. It was written in the late 80s, so actually quite late on in her career. I think it was her fourth last big novel that she wrote. And I have read part of The Shell Seekers before, physically in an actual book. And then I stopped, and I couldn't remember why I had stopped halfway through. And so I went looking for the book, couldn't find it, and then realised that I think it may have been a library book, and I probably only got to read half of it before I returned it, and then just never got it back out again. So I started right back at the beginning for the audio version. It's beautiful. I'm really, really enjoying it. And now I have reached the part that I got to with the actual reading. And so all of the story from now on is brand new to me, which is a really lovely thing. So what is The Shell Seekers about? Well, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the story. You may have read it yourself, listened to it, or maybe watched an adaptation. I know I got a gorgeous message from lovely Sharon from Magnolia Nana, gorgeous YouTube channel, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And she said that she had read it and loved it. And it is probably Pilcher's best known novel, although it did come quite late in her career, and it is the first of what are known as her big four. So Shell Seekers, September, Coming Home, and Winter Solstice. And The Shell Seekers tells the story of a lady called Penelope Keeling. And when we first meet Penelope, she's in her 60s and she has been sick, and she is coming home from the hospital, and everyone's kind of fussing about her, including her three adult children. So we meet them, Nancy, Noel, and Olivia. We learn more about their lives and what's going on for them. And then we learn more about Penelope's past and her life as a young girl and a young woman. And like with, I think, much of Pilcher's work, this novel is not a particularly plot-driven novel. It's very much a character-driven novel. So it is the characters and their relationships with each other, I suppose, that are really what draw you into the story, because they're just so well written. Now, you might be wondering where the title comes from, and the title, The Shell Seekers, refers to a painting. So Penelope's father, who is no longer alive, when we meet Penelope at the start of the book, he was quite a well-respected painter. And when we meet Penelope, his work has kind of had a resurgence in popularity. It is becoming very valuable. Other works of his are making quite large amounts at auction. And Penelope has in her possession a painting of his called The Shell Seekers, and her children become aware that this painting, which she loves, could actually be worth quite a lot of money, along with some smaller kind of sketches of his that Penelope has. So the three children are aware of this. They all have their own opinion on the painting and opinion on what should be done with the painting. Perhaps some of their motivations for taking interest in this painting are more honourable than others. And I'm sure a lot of people will relate to that in any family. If there's something that's worth a lot of money, maybe people have differing ideas on what should be done with it. So yes, basically the story centres around the painting, around Penelope, around her children, her grown-up children, and then other characters that kind of come in and out of the story. And it is absolutely beautiful. She is a stunning writer. She has a great ability to write character and also to inject emotion at the moments where you may not be expecting it. So for example, there is a part, this isn't really giving any spoilers, but there is, well, I don't know how you spoil a book that doesn't really have much of a plot, but there's a part where Penelope hires a gardener, and I don't really want to go too much into it because it's a beautiful, beautiful scene. But basically, he's eating a sandwich. That's all I'll say. He's eating a sandwich, and there's this interaction about this sandwich, and it's a gorgeous scene. And I think it shows Pilcher's ability to just really, really show the human nature of people, and to kind of encourage the reader to really invest themselves emotionally in these characters. And then, of course, there's a much greater emotional depth to the piece of writing. So that's it. I'm sure when I come back to you in 2 weeks' time, I'll be finished and I'll be able to give my verdict. I imagine it will be very positive, and then I will move on to something else. Probably not another Pilcher. I do want to read September, but I want to read it in September. Considering I read Winter Solstice during a heat wave, I think it would be nice to read September in actual September. And but I have lots and lots of other things that I can be listening to and be getting on with. So that's all for this week. I will see you in a fortnight. Take care and enjoy the rest of your summer.